All right, everyone. Welcome to the second annual Technology.fm Yuletide Fireplace Chat looking at the smart home. I am actually Michael Wolf. I don't know, what you nominated me to kind of drive the show, I guess moderate it this year. Jason, you did a great job last year. So I have to follow in your footsteps, but we're going to start off this podcast. If anyone who doesn't remember, last year we joined together and had a chat. All these different smart home podcasts are part of the Technology.fm technology podcast collective, and talked about what we saw in the smart home. We talked a little bit about the year that had passed, and we took a little bit of a look forward. And we're going to do the same thing this year. I'm really excited to be joined by the folks at HomeTech.fm, Jason and Seth. Why don't you guys say hi?
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Thanks for
Hey, Mike, how are you?
thanks for stepping into the hot seat this year. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. And we also have Richard Gunther over at Home On.
Hello, hello. Good to be here. This was a lot of fun last year. I am looking forward to this episode for sure.
One thing we didn't clear up before the podcast, who's doing sound effects? Is that you, Seth?
Yeah, that could be. Make it happen. I've got the eggnog, which no wait, this is rum.
Oh, I forgot the alcoholic beverage. That's where I messed up.
Oh man, rookie.
Total rookie mistake. So we have three different podcasts. We have the Smart Home Show. I'm the host of that. We have Home Tech FM with Jason and Seth. We have Home On with Richard. And we all talk about smart home in, I guess, similar but sometimes slightly different ways. We have our own lens on the market. I think folks who listen to the podcast know the way we come at it. I don't think we really need to go in that. And I think that'll probably come out and be teased out a little bit in the conversation today. And what we're going to do, and I like this, Jason, I think you put this first. We're going to revisit last year's predictions. That's always good. Seeing how wrong we were.
That's right. I thought that was a good place to start. Show everyone how not smart we are.
So I'm going to start off. You have me up teeing this baby off, and it looks like my big three predictions were that services and monetization strategies in the smart home would be a big focus in 2016. I also predicted that the intersection of machine learning, AI, and the smart home would become a big theme. We would see that more and more. And then I also predicted that Bluetooth versus Thread would be this big epic battle. And I think that one I'm going to start off with. That was kind of a meh. I don't think
that one kind of
clunked. You can hear the clunk. We need the clunk sound now. So. But just revisiting that story a little bit, it was kind of quiet for both of those technologies. I still am not seeing a lot of momentum for Thread. Bluetooth had a strong finish to the year. They just announced Bluetooth 5. I wrote a little post about that. What we didn't see out of Bluetooth was mesh. And I still haven't seen it. The Bluetooth SIG folks told me that will be coming in the first half of 2017. We will probably hear something early in 2017 about when that's coming. So I still feel like the complete picture for Bluetooth in the smart home has to include mesh, just because when you look at Bluetooth on low power devices, they're not going to be able to do Bluetooth 5 extended range, most likely. So I think that mesh is going to be a big part of the story there. So what do you guys think on that?
Yeah, the best quote I heard about Bluetooth is they should change their slogan to Bluetooth. It'll be great next year.
That's kind of I think that there's an entity that already has it. That's a smart home.
Oh,
the smart home's always like, ow.
That's already been trademarked.
Shots fired. Yeah.
No, I think that one did kind of fizzle out. I agreed with you when you said it last year. I went back and listened to the last year's episode this week, and I really enjoyed seeing these predictions and seeing how some of them bore out. I do think Bluetooth versus Thread is probably one to keep an eye on moving forward. But yeah, not as big of a story this year, I don't think, as any of us thought. I do think that the intersection of machine learning, AI in the smart home that you mentioned last year was definitely a home run. That's a huge one that we've seen much of.
My comment on that was ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Winner, chicken dinner.
There's the bell.
That was great. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I think overall in technology, the white hot sector of the moment is artificial intelligence, it's bots. And I think there's a flavor of that in the smart home. Clearly, I think it's the female sounding artificial intelligence that shall not be named. Apparently I'm not supposed to say it. Starts with an A. That was obviously one of the big ones. I think Google's and Apple both started to think more heavily about that. So yeah, that was a big one.
Mike, I know you have both now, Google Home and Alexa. Can you give us a report so far how they compare?
Well, I felt like Google Home still is a little bit of a work in progress. It doesn't have as much instant information. I still think they're building out the database. What I've been disappointed with is, and this is just a nitpick, I think we talked about this, Jason, when we had you on the podcast, is it doesn't sync with my Google Apps accounts. It only works with gmail.com accounts, which I found just a little bit of an annoying nitpick. But overall, it's a pretty good product out of the gate. So have any of you guys got that yet besides me?
We bought 2 of them for work, and we sent them back immediately once they didn't work with Google Apps. Right? It just wasn't worth us waiting for it. So yeah, not so much a nitpick. Huh. I mean, how do you have a personal assistant that can't tie into your work life? And I mean, what are you supposed to have? Just one Google account? No, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was the exciting part for me. Like, wow, I have all these. I live in Google from a workflow perspective, and like this can surface my calendars. Well, not yet.
I might point out it's called Google Home, not Google Work.
There's Richard, the voice of reason.
Oh, Richard.
No,
where's the wah-wah sound effect?
No, I think that's a big deal, and I said that when I came on your show. I don't know. I mean, I live in Google as well. It's my day job here in Denver at a home technology company, HomeTech.fm. We run all of that through Google Apps. So an increasing amount of my life and scheduling and correspondence all runs through some form of Google Apps. And so to not have that seems like a pretty big deal to me. But I get your point, Richard, too. And I guess that presumably wasn't a huge initiative of theirs right out of the gate.
Google has a history of rolling out their features first to the general product line and then adapting them for the apps. And I have a feeling that's because of additional security and complexity associated with the infrastructure that keeps all the apps working together. And
you had, as one of your predictions, Richard, that Google and a couple of the other big guys, Apple and Microsoft, would continue to move into the smart home. And so with Google launching Google Home, you were pretty spot on with that.
Yeah, so I think I probably fared a little bit better here because my prediction was that the 3 big tech companies were each going to make significant inroads in the home. And I talked about how Google and Apple and Microsoft even were all going to make pushes into the connected home. Google launched Google Home. I would call that a win. I know it's not there yet. I know it has a long way to go yet, but they finally got into the home stuff, and they had been talking about Google at Home years ago, like 2.5 years ago. This is their big play. I kind of wish that they had maybe put an additional radio or 2 in the device so that it could also act as a hub for all of the thousands of different devices that are available today. For whatever reason, they chose not to do that, but I think this is a great launch for them. Now, Apple, HomeKit's real now. And I'll talk about HomeKit a little bit later in the show, but for all intents and purposes, Apple has made their play. They have said HomeKit is here. It's a major part of our OS now. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more of the HomeKit devices coming out. And this is the make it or break it year for HomeKit as far as I'm concerned. Now, Microsoft. Phew, man, I'm so glad for the last couple days because I would not have made this one had it not been for the announcements that just came in under the wire. So Microsoft had AllJoyn baked into Windows 10, and pretty much as I had suggested last year, nobody cared. it was a great opportunity for developers, but nobody's really building to AllJoyn. Not nobody, obviously, but very few people are paying any attention to AllJoyn. Just within the last couple of days, Microsoft teased that their Cortana AI is going to be built into all kinds of consumer products. And the first one that they've officially announced is a partnership with Harman Kardon. So you'll have a Harman Kardon speaker that looks suspiciously like an Echo. And instead of responding to her name, it'll respond to Cortana's name. And it will give you all of the Cortana goodness. And they've announced a skills kit to allow developers to build all sorts of support for it. So this isn't coming until 2017, but I'm going to call this maybe a half win.
Nice.
My only warning there is just don't play Halo around your Cortana integrated speaker. You might go nuts.
Do you have to actually call her name out with "hey" when you're playing Halo? I don't honestly know.
Yeah, Richard, I think you did. I think you did get them all in there, though. And last year there was kind of a spirited debate. We won't go into it too much because, like you said, we're gonna touch on HomeKit a little bit, I'm sure, as we move through the rest of the show. But I know last year HomeKit was one of Seth's big picks, and there was a nice sort of heated dialogue there about if HomeKit was a real deal or what was going on. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think this was a big year for HomeKit, and I agree 2017 to me looks like a make it or break it year for Apple's initiative there.
Now, Seth, let's move on to your predictions. I think one of the big ones for you was we'd make progress towards the conscious home. So first of all, explain what you kind of meant by that and how you think we did on that prediction.
I probably should have listened to the episode again to remember what I was talking about. But I think it falls in line with what you were talking about with the intersection of AI and machine learning. The home becoming not something that is just reacting to you pressing a button or timer events that are going off, but something that actually learns your habits and learns what you want to be doing and does it for you automatically. True home automation. And I mean, to that respect, I don't think we've seen any real progress, but I think that's where everybody is still aiming down the road. And you definitely saw that with the video that Google introduced Google Home with. I mean, if that doesn't tell you where they have their sights set on what home automation is and should be, I don't know what does. I mean, it has all of that in there built into a device that doesn't do much today, but could down the road fulfill this promise of a conscious home, something that reacts to you rather than being around, rather than just triggering off random events that you've pressed and made to want happen. Although it will still do that. I just think we're not there yet, but I mean, we've seen Amazon just in the last couple of weeks not release, but put on the cloud, on the AWS services, more machine learning and AI stuff. We've seen Google getting further into this, and of course, Apple is still on the hiring spree and hiring everybody up around this. So I don't think this is anywhere near done, and I don't think it will be for quite some time. But at least it still looks interesting, and I hope that we start seeing small things, small things along the line of getting to where that Google video really showed where it could be.
One thing that all these guys are good at are making these 1-minute intro videos to what the future of the home looks like. They're all so polished. They're amazing.
Everyone's good at that, right?
But to your point, Seth, I think you're right. I think the home understanding you, understanding the context of what you're doing is going to become more and more real. This wasn't quite smart home, but I was so fixated and fascinated. You guys probably saw the Amazon Go announcement from Amazon, this idea of this future grocery store.
Yep, love that.
I think they're going to take some of those technologies and kind of weave those in the home, whether that or not that's facial recognition, knowing who the person is, what they call sensor fusion, which I think is basically just triangulation between the different sensors to understand what you're doing, whether it's pulling a packaged good off the store shelf and walking out, or just going into your refrigerator. They're going to know what you're doing and then be able to give you some sort of response to that. So I think we're on track. I think Amazon and Google are going to be the big ones to watch in that respect.
Yeah, I feel like we have products and companies that are doing this, but I don't think that we're anywhere close to the whole home being this way. If you look at some of the products that are out there, even just general consumer products like the Beyond lights or the Stack lighting, or even the Nest thermostat, which was one of the first products to kick this all off, they're all built on this idea of the product learning your behaviors and adapting accordingly. And I think each of them are doing a pretty good job at that. I'm really impressed by how well the Stack lighting system that I'm testing has learned my schedule and adapted to my habits. So I think we're going to see more of that in products, but then we're back in that position where, okay, well, everything is doing its own thing. It needs to work together.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Jason. Now, Jason, you have predicted HomeKit and continued innovation by Google and Nest, which we talked a little bit about. You can touch on that if you want, but I think let's talk a little bit about the Cydia channel push towards managed services, because I think we haven't talked about that yet. And that's an area that you watch. That's an area you watch very closely. How'd you do on that prediction?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say my prediction about continued innovation by Google sounded pretty good until I added Nest onto the end of it. Right? What happened there? My gosh, just a train wreck. But we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit later. Yeah. To your direct question, Mike, that was my prediction last year, and I think for sure it was a trend that we saw this year playing a huge role in Cydia. It was actually probably, to me, the single most important story that I saw come out of Cydia. It was like these managed services and what we've kind of coined on the HomeTech podcast is RSM, remote systems management platform. So products that allow, home technology professionals to remotely monitor and manage their client systems and prevent truck rolls and really provide a high level of service. And the end game to all of this, the big goal and the holy grail right now in the professional home technology space is RMR, recurring monthly revenue. That's a huge topic amongst home technology professionals and figuring out how we can kind of get our clients onto recurring plans and paying for service. And I think that's something that we'll continue to see moving forward. But definitely, it was a story that I predicted last year, and I think that definitely bore out.
I think one thing we all have to keep an eye on is the fast rising importance of things like online training for professionals, things like, I don't know, Home Tech Academy. you guys can send me the check later for that.
Nice, Mike. I appreciate that.
That was actually really exciting. I think I'm excited for that. We won't go into that because that's another topic. But
we can point people back to the. You were kind enough to have me on your show recently to talk about it, so we can point them back there. Check out the Smart Home Show. I really appreciated you having me on, and it's definitely an initiative that we're very excited about.
Now, the next wave of questions, we kind of finished our retrospective look back. I don't want to grade us, but I think I probably had maybe a C-.
This is a self-grading exercise.
Yeah. But let's look at what we thought was the most surprising or our favorite story of the year. And this doesn't have to be something that is like the biggest breakout story, but it can be. But what you kind of saw as like a nice surprise, or one of the things you thought were favorite. I think that I was pleasantly surprised by some new products. One of the things I liked was the Nucleus. I don't know if you guys saw that home intercom system. I thought that was a really cool, interesting category. And it's one of those things like you just kind of go, well, why hasn't anyone done that well yet? Because that just seems kind of natural. So that was one. Have any of you guys checked that out?
So I actually saw that at Cydia, and I have to admit, I kind of glossed over it. They were at the Amazon, the Echo booth, Amazon booth there, and it's an interesting product. I didn't give it a lot of attention, and I have to be honest, I heard you mention it recently, Mike, I think actually in one of your newsletters, and I said, oh, maybe I should give this thing a second look, honestly, because I hadn't been paying attention. I think it's actually a pretty interesting product, and incidentally, we had a client recently request an intercom system at our work, which I was very surprised by. I don't know that we've had that request, and gosh, I don't even remember when. But it's nice to kind of have a new generation product that we can maybe point at. And I thought one of the other interesting applications is for like aging in place potentially was one of the things they mentioned at Cydia. So something easy for an elderly parent or somebody of that nature to just pick up and do some FaceTime, calling. I thought it was very cool. So interesting looking product.
Yeah, I don't know if I can guarantee its success. I still feel like, FaceTime on iPads, like, you may ultimately be the winner with, some sort of like intercom system. But I think it's an interesting one to watch. I also think just the continued success of products like Ring is, I guess, I wouldn't call that surprising. It just keeps continuing. We aren't seeing necessarily the whole smart home really kind of kicking butt, but it's these standalone products where people see utility in them and consumers understand. I think that's the key. Consumers get products like video doorbells. So that's why we're seeing those types of products continuing to do well.
Yeah, I love that product. That's something that I've been a big fan of since they introduced the Ring version of that. Ring really being the next generation of Doorbot. And I think that they've done a lot in this space in terms of raising awareness, in terms of getting it out in front of people, in terms of advertising. They seem to really be doing everything right now, including, and this is why I love it more than any other product out there. Sorry, Skybell. I think the industrial design of this thing is perfect for the front door. So many of these products out there just look way, way out there, like they belong on a spaceship or something.
Right.
Have you seen the Vivint? The Vivint one's pretty good.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I think the whole front door is a great space for smart home, including the locks, the doorbells. I just think there's a lot of utility there. So I continue to think like the smart front door is like a great area for these guys.
Yep, absolutely.
So Richard, let's hear a little bit about your surprises. You want to talk a little bit more about HomeKit? You felt like it came of age this year.
Well, I did, and that was a huge surprise to me because if you listen to last year's show, I kind of jumped down Seth's throat when he was talking about how awesome HomeKit was.
Kind of.
Because my experience with HomeKit last year was nothing but bad. I had less than a 50% success rate with the products that I was purchasing or getting from vendors and testing. And so I was, joking with everybody else that this year at WWDC, what do you think? You think we're even going to hear HomeKit? And I was resigned to the fact that we were not going to. But instead, it was one of the top 10 features that they highlighted when they announced iOS 10. And they gave it like top real estate in the OS. It is a part of the control center, which is available even when your device is locked. I mean, I was stunned by how much visibility and support Apple put behind HomeKit in this past year. And for the most part, it does now just work. I still have devices that occasionally it can't find, but that eventually works itself out. And I'm really impressed by this. I didn't expect this to work out this way at all.
Now, Richard, do you have an apology to make?
Seth, I'm sorry.
No. I think you were right on last year. But what I think I was looking at was forward moving. The infrastructure, the plan, the idea of HomeKit is so unique and interesting. To me, looking down the road, I could only see how it could only get better from where it was at. Even with minor investment from Apple, I was not expecting it to be a top 10 feature. I was not expecting it to be on the lock screen of the phone. I was not expecting it to be, so well integrated in with iOS 10. I mean, that's just not. I was thinking, hey, we're going to get a couple more devices and some third-party developers are going to come up with some really nice third-party apps to control this stuff, not Apple themselves. So it's definitely gone well beyond the expectations that I had for it this year. And I'm excited to see what they can do with it, because I do think the vision is completely unique to something that Apple can do. And I think that they have a jump on everybody at this point. I mean, a lot of the pundits made fun of them early on, but I don't see anybody playing this catch-up game. I don't see this type of HomeKit API being built directly into Google Android, for example. It's just not there. But you have over 500 million devices walking around with HomeKit on them and running. That's a huge market for anybody to look at and to ignore. It's crazy. If you're a business, why would you ignore that many customers? I mean, granted, a small portion of them will be buying HomeKit product, but that's still a small portion of that many customers is still a lot of customers.
This is kind of crazy, and it's early days yet, but I almost feel that even with the approved hardware requirements and the certification process, that we're getting to the point where if you're coming out with a new device that works with HomeKit, is almost table stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I won't rehash it too much, but I thought that their decision to include home control within the control center from the lock screen, that if you're not really tuned in and paying attention, that's one of those things that could easily just escape you. But to me, as somebody who follows the smart home and a little bit of development and how Apple's been moving through that space, to me that is significant. The fact that they chose to do that, that's hallowed ground in iOS, and so the fact that they would give HomeKit that sort of front and center billing in iOS 10, I thought was significant and really showed that Apple is very committed to the smart home, which is something I think we were all starting to question.
Now, your second runner-up, Richard, is I think we all were a little bit surprised by how public Nest troubles were.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And, part of it is that the troubles that they had were so public, and it was like watching a train wreck, right? It was like you're reading someone's Facebook page of a breakup or something. It was just...
It was like Wink.
Insane.
It was like Wink 2.0.
Actually,
right.
I mean, Wink was far less nasty, right? I mean, this just got down and dirty nasty. And, I kind of want Seth to weigh in here too, because he had this same point. And certainly the two of you have talked about this on the show a lot, about what a meltdown they had. I don't think anybody from the outside saw that coming. I think we looked at Nest as Alphabet's darling and expected that they would carry Alphabet's vision of the connected home forward. But in fact, what happened was they melted down, and Google basically did an end run around their own company to get stuff out there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if I was thinking HomeKit was going to do well, I sure wasn't thinking that this was going to happen to Nest. Just a couple of, heck, it wasn't even a couple of weeks later. It was by February. We were constantly talking about Nest and the troubles that they were having. And I mean, I can't believe that today we're still waiting on product. I mean, what do they have?
I don't know what you're talking about. They put out lots of new product. Come on.
Right.
We have colors now. We have colors on the Nest thermostat.
And a really sweet outdoor camera, right?
Yeah, with a beautiful white cable that everybody's spouse is going to love having stapled to the wall.
Swing and a miss, man.
Ouch.
Yeah, I can't believe that. I can't believe that we're here in December and Nest has released. I mean, really, what's amounted to? I mean, we were all joking around here, but like
nothing,
really zero product. Yeah. A couple of nice point upgrades, I would say, especially on the software side, where the cameras can now detect motion detection. The motion detection, not just pixels moving, it's people moving, and you can pick that up. That's nice. But I mean, that's software. That's not hardware. That's not what I thought. That's not what I think everybody was thinking that these guys were going to come out with. I mean, where's the Nest security system? Nest, it's made for the home. Like that name right there is perfect branding. And they have a couple of cameras, some smoke detectors, and a thermostat still. Just unbelievable. So yeah, I'm just shaking my head at this one. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It seems like it was driven in large part by Tony Fadell. And like that was from the beginning, in retrospect, looking in the rearview mirror, a force fit. It was not a great fit for, I think, Google's model, which, he's used to kind of being kind of a kingpin and driving things, and like he just had all these turf battles. The Dropcam open letters from the response from the old Dropcam CEO. It was just like you said, a slow motion car wreck. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, I got to wonder. We can move on here. I'll make this quick, but I just have to wonder with the new leadership, what we'll see from Nest, particularly in light of the fact that Google did an end around on them with Google Home, and how's that all going to shake out? We had Gene Lanois on our podcast a number of weeks ago. He's the head of their Pro channel, and he great guy. They seemed like they really get it when it comes to the professional, and that's obviously I think a small piece of the pie for them. Although he did say it represents a substantial portion of their sales, and so. With their installed base, their huge presence in the market, just in terms of consumer awareness and new leadership, I don't think we write them off, but I am very curious to see what they're able to do moving forward.
We also just real quick, we should mention, Google's efforts in the smart home are more than just Nest or more than just Google Home. They just announced, as you guys probably saw, Android Things, which is basically I think it's a renamed Brillo is basically what it is. So it's their Android-based OS for Internet of Things. So I think we'll see more from Google next year, including, I think, what I would call ingredient technology and platforms.
If Google introduces one more infrastructure component without actually delivering product on it, I'm going to rip my hair out.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's getting hard to keep track.
Seth, I have to ask you, what you're one of your big surprises of 2016 was the Wipe Warmer 3000. You have to tell us what this is.
Yeah. It's a key part of our show, and there was an invention that I made, and I sent over to Jason earlier.
This was
year.
A story arc. It covered multiple episodes,
and it culminated in Jason opening a box live on air and pulling out of the box a Internet of Things controlled wipe warmer for baby wipes. And
revolutionary.
Yeah, it's a visionary product. And if you go to wipewarmer3000.com, if that domain still works, that should bring you to the...
Also, kudos for that. Seriously.
Well, marketing. So it's got to happen. So I haven't really come up with anything for this year. I've been kind of busy myself, and I may need a Wipe Warmer 3000 for myself. But
hey, speaking of that, Seth, now's probably a good time to give a quick mention here. I know you and your wife are getting very close to your due date, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on baby watch right now, so.
So
I'm not going to run out of here
Seth
any second. But
hey guys, let's kind of mute Seth for a while so he can't hear us. Maybe you're just Seth. Don't listen. Guys, let's go in on a Wipe Warmer 3000 for Seth as a baby gift.
I have a better idea, Mike. A Wipe Warmer 4000.
Oh, the 4000's out.
The second gen.
Seth, your next big surprise, your next big trend of 2016 was M&A madness. There was a lot of consolidation this year.
Yeah. Now, just scrolling back through all of the stories of 2015, I kept seeing, ADT has been acquired, Vizio has been acquired, Nortec got acquired, SnapAV has been on a buying spree in the Cedia side. Harman was purchased by Samsung, and of course the big AT&T Time Warner thing that's still floating around out there. I'm not a business guy, but I know you are, Mike. This is a lot of money to be moving around, and what's going on with this?
Well, I think we talk a lot about how smart home changes. It's kind of disruptive, how it changes things. I think to a certain extent, we are seeing that with things like ADT getting acquired. I think that, the reinvention of home security has been a thing I've written a lot about. I think that's a big deal. The AT&T Time Warner thing, I think it's a bigger story than just smart home, but I think that's a part of it. So I think we're just kind of in the telecom world is consolidating, the security world is getting mature. And so I think that's not all that surprising. Nortec is interesting because they're kind of like in some ways an old school company, but they also have some pretty cool smart home stuff. So that one was a little bit surprising to me, but I think it was a good move for them.
It felt, just as an outside guy and looking at all this stuff, it feels like there's a lot of money out there that's been sitting on the sidelines, and people have had, money to buy companies with. But I think one of the words you used there just really is what I kind of feel about this too. It's like a maturity thing. Like this is what happens in a mature market. These companies get bought and sold off and bought and sold off, and that's what we're seeing happening. So, no products from Nest, but everybody else got bought up and sold off in different directions. It's kind of crazy. Just a crazy year for that.
Did we see any big high profile? I'm trying to think now. I'm racking my brain. I'm gonna kick myself later. Any big high profile smart home startups get acquired?
Nothing jumps to my mind. No,
there were no Nests this year, were there? There's nothing like that.
No, not at all.
I think there was a pullback on, I think, just overall excitement about the category, just in general, because of some of the troubles like the Winks of the world. So I think that's probably why, and people are starting to realize that hardware is hard. So I think that's part of this larger theme of, okay, guys, if you're making a cool device, great, but what's the business model here? How do we make money? So right. I think that's probably why we didn't see any of those big deals.
Yeah, and you talked about it on our show last year, just some retrenchment going on in the smart home, and I look back to when Seth and I started doing the Home Tech podcast. It was coming up on 3 years ago, and it wasn't long after we had started doing it that the whole Nest acquisition went down, and Smart Things was that same year, and that was just a wild year in terms of home automation hubs and platforms coming to the market. And I do think right now we're seeing that things sort of shake out, maybe consolidate in a loose sense of the word, in terms of people just reevaluating what's our value add, what are we coming to market with. And I think it goes back to your point that you mentioned earlier, just seeing interesting innovation in point products and people looking at the market differently and saying we don't have to be the be all end all or the one stop shop for everybody. If we can just come out with a cool product that solves a problem in a unique way, we can make a nice run at it.
I think one of the areas where we did see some innovation and some excitement was in a kind of a surprising place, which is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, we tend to think of like this old born technology, but Jason, one of your surprises for the year was the interest and excitement around mesh Wi-Fi.
Yeah, this to me was definitely the biggest surprise of the year. Like if you would have talked to me last year and said, hey, Wi-Fi is going to be a sexy category by the end of this year, I would have thought you were crazy, but here we are.
I don't know. I think Mike actually said that. Maybe not those words, but I think he kind of hinted at that.
Oh, did he?
Last year's.
I'm now going to grade myself. I'm now a C+ now. I've moved my grade up.
You went up. Good for you. Yeah, I think we had started to see maybe some of the early signs of it, but gosh, you've got Eero, Luma, Plume, Ubiquiti, Amplify, Securify, Allman. They've been around for a while, but they've got the Allman 3 now. Netgear's Orbi.
I have my Google Wi-Fi sitting here right now.
Google Wi-Fi, yeah. So I mean, just rattling off some of those, I'm sure there's probably one or two that I missed. Starry Wi-Fi is another one, I think, coming at it from a slightly different angle. But there's just a lot of companies trying to solve that Wi-Fi problem, I guess, if you could say there's a problem. I do think that in a lot of existing homes, my parents are a great example. Decent sized home with really poor Wi-Fi coverage and not a lot of infrastructure. It was built, a while back. And so, relying on repeaters has really been the only option in the past. And as anyone who's tried to use those or had to support clients who tried to use them, they're generally pretty awful. And so having, great mesh options at a low price point is super compelling. And so when you look at it now in hindsight, I'm not surprised given how much more demands the average consumer is really putting on their network and their Wi-Fi. It's obviously an area of opportunity, but I do have to wonder how many of these companies are going to be able to make a sustained run at it given the amount of competition there. And then the last thing I thought that ties into this story that was interesting was Apple's recent sort of quiet announcement, I would say, that they're getting out of the router business. And I just have to wonder, I don't know, it's pure speculation, but I just have to wonder if Apple was looking at their technology and thinking, well, we've got a choice. We've either got to, revamp this and get into the mesh game or just get out because there's just too much competition. And I just have to wonder how much, if at all, that factored into their decision.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because really they were the company that was able to sell a router outside of that commoditized space. And now we have all these companies that are selling these Wi-Fi access point systems, and not, aside from a router, you might already have a router, but now you have this mesh network of just your wireless, and that's going to cost you anywhere from $300 to $500. It's kind of impressive that people are paying it.
It is, but Wi-Fi is a pain point for people, right? And I think that obviously we don't know how many people are buying it, but I think that this is one of those interesting things for me and Seth. I think coming from the Cedia background that we do, I look at it from two sides. For me, spending $500 on Wi-Fi for my house when I've got a perfectly functioning airport network, probably not going to happen. But for my clients, and we have a lot of them, $500 is a steal compared
Absolutely.
to what we would have had to do, just a year or two ago to get them into any sort of mesh solution. So all relative, of course, and certainly not implying, $500 is nothing to sneeze at, but it is a matter of what angle you're looking at it from as well.
And I think it's interesting that they've managed to kind of take it out of this commoditized space and now looked at ways of adding features, adding like family content management and access times and all kinds of things where they can really provide a good experience and an understandable way of managing your network in ways that companies like Cisco and Netgear and others have completely failed at for years.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad to see these products out. The performance is there, and even better for me, the way these things look. I'm just so happy that somebody released a Wi-Fi product that doesn't look like a robotic spider, because these things got so ugly. They just got so ugly, and like, why would anybody want to look at these things? And then I get one of the Ubiquiti amplifiers in, and I'm looking at it. It's a really nice looking product. I mean, the Eero, we saw them at Cedia and Luma. These things look great. So I'm just happy that these things are consumer focused and really look like it's something you'd put out on your desk and just to get used. Not only to get good Wi-Fi, but also to have something that doesn't look like crazy alien spaceship thing that some nerd came up with. Like it's just it's well designed stuff. And I really appreciate that.
Jason, your last surprise of the year, very quickly, you mentioned physical control.
This will not be a surprise to Seth. I know that. And probably not to listeners of our show. I don't know. Again, this question's about what's your favorite story, right? Or what resonated with you. And I just love this space, and I think it's got a long ways to go in terms of developing and getting more mature. But this idea of getting back to physical control, I think there's some app fatigue happening in the smart home. I think people are looking for ways to control and interact with their home other than fumbling for a phone or a tablet. And part of that goes back to, of course, voice user interfaces. But I think part of it also ties into, people wanting just a simple old-fashioned button that they can push and get a predictable result. And so you've got companies like Flick. Logitech announced their Logitech Pop. Febraro is kind of a professionally installed solution, as I understand it. I'm not too familiar with them, but they've got one called the Button. 7 Hugs is one that I kind of tie into this. 7 Hugs Smart Remote. They're cool looking product, I think. And just saw an email from them. They've got $1 million in pre-sales for their smart remote, and so I tie that into that category as well. Just ways to control your smart home. Aside from using an app. And I think that physical control really does, in my opinion, have a place in the smart home moving forward.
I love buttons. I think Richard's made fun of my button love before.
Mike, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I like just a button. Give me a button.
I like the tactile feedback. I mean,
I did too.
And I was actually really bummed. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm a big Pebble fan, and I had actually crowdfunded their last watch, and I didn't get it. And they refunded my money this week, so I was bummed. What they also had was that the Pebble, I forget, the name's escaping me now, but that Pebble button. They actually had their own connected button that had API integration with Spotify. And I just had this vision of like this button that was going to go on my keychain that it could connect to cool services. So I love this idea of very simple interfaces, physical interfaces.
I like that too. I think it's a great idea. For Pebble, I thought it was a distraction for them, but I think there are many companies that are doing this well. I love the Febraro offering. We're talking, and I have an image of the Febraro button on my desktop because I'm working on a story about it. And they have this big red button that looks like a panic alarm, like a big, huge, don't touch this button that should be under a plastic cage, you know? I love that. I want one of those.
I think in fairness, it comes in different colors, right?
It does. It totally does. Yeah. But
it does. It looks like a panic button.
Yeah.
Right about now, we need a sound effect, Seth. What does the button sound like? We press that big red button. There we go.
No, it's the only sound effect I have.
No. We need
It's like a sad horn sound.
We're a volunteer show, Mike. That's the only one we got.
Please contribute so we can get better sound effects.
And my favorite offering here is still to date the Pico Remote. I think the Pico Remote is probably one of the best options out there for providing people who otherwise don't have a means of controlling their electronic devices with something that is a physical switch that can fit on the wall. Love those things.
And we didn't mention the dash. We got to mention the dash because I think I like the idea of the AWS button that they actually put out for developers that isn't tied to any sort of cheap packaged good that you can actually develop around. I think I've been crying and telling Amazon they need to do an all-purpose button. I'd love it for them to do that.
Seth, I think that was the button that you ridiculed for doing nothing, right?
Yes, the button that does nothing. It costs
$20 to do nothing.
Yep.
It'll get there. No, I love the idea of physical control. It's a area that I watch closely, and I think that we'll be interested to see what continues to develop in that space.
Now we have a supersized show growing, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Richard. So we're going to move on. I'm going to step into my moderator role here and crack the whip a little bit. We're a bunch of talkers. We can probably make this like a 3-hour episode, but we're going to move on to the second question, the second overall theme, or maybe it's the third now, on what we think was the most overall important story for smart home. What was the biggest story? And Seth, we're going to start with you.
Oh boy. Well, I think this year, for me, it's been security and seeing what has happened here. Geez, in the last even couple of weeks, but this has been going on all year. With the last couple of weeks, we've seen botnets just become into existence from nothing. It seems they were people left insecure, what they call Internet of Thing devices on the internet, and bad actors came along and scooped those devices up and put them under their control, and then started to do really bad things with them, like massive DDoS attacks and bringing down websites that you and I use every day. So, I mean, I think that this is this is an emerging thing. It's still going on. We know that the Mira botnet that was out there has broken off and splintered off into like 50 some odd other botnets. And they're still seeing these massive amounts of traffic that are out there. I think that there will be more of these attacks to come and more devices infected with what is essentially a virus. And I think we're going to have to really sit down and think next year how to fix this problem, because it is fixable. The devices that were hacked weren't installed correctly. Most of them were cameras, like IP cameras. So whoever opened up ports and put these onto the Wild West internet installed them incorrectly. And I hate to think of it, but I think, I'm not a big government regulation person, but I think this is going to be one of those things that you're going to see the government get involved with, and say at a minimum, if you produce a device that has that connects to the internet, that device has to be able to be updated securely, and you have to prove that before you can sell the device. I mean, they do this with all sorts of things, like cars and other things like that. Like, why not with internet camera that by itself can't do very much, but collectively can bring down billions of dollars of commerce.
The interesting thing that I'm still like struggling with on this story, particularly the one about the Mirai botnet, or however you pronounce that, is it's just this, and I'm still trying to figure out what this means, but it wasn't like the end users that were really impacted by this story. It was like their cameras were hijacked and converted into zombie computers on this botnet army, and they went out and attacked Dyn, a big DNS server, and took down internet all over the East Coast. And people who had these cameras in their homes probably had no idea, right, that was even happening. And so it just, to me, again, I don't know what to make of that, but it's an interesting wrinkle to the story. And I think that it's doing good in the long run in the sense that it's raising awareness and that people are becoming more tuned into the fact that connected devices do come with vulnerabilities and they should be taking that into account when they make their buying decision. But I still think that, until this story hits home in a more, prominent way where end users themselves are really directly affected, I think that it's still going to struggle to get the attention of like the mainstream news consumer, I guess.
I think this is a huge story. I think both your guys' comments are spot on. I think it's, we can't rely on consumers who by and large aren't technical people to have to install things correctly. We have to design products that go out to them. And one of those things is to force them to move away from the default password. Do some sort of onboarding that doesn't require, they just can't plug it in and its password is the password. That is a problem that I think can be easily, that's one of the easy things we could fix. I think I work with the Internet of Things Consortium, and they're working as a body to create better best practices. I think we saw the Department of Homeland Security release basically a memo after the Mirai bot attack about, hey, we need to do these best practices. So I think this was a big wake up call. This is going to be, we're getting a little bit into next year, but this will be a huge story going into 2017.
Yeah. Yep.
Now let's move on to you, Jason. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of smart home as a service, recurring monthly revenue. This is one of the things you think was the biggest story of 2016.
Yeah, and obviously that's colored a little bit by the angle that I'm coming at the market from, but I do think that it is applicable, and I won't spend a ton of time talking about it because I know we discussed it a little bit earlier in the show, but I think it's applicable even to DIY companies who you referred to are trying to figure out, how do we make a sustainable business out of this? If we're going to try to get into the smart home with one-time hardware sales and that's it, how long is that really going to work for? And so everybody from DIY companies all the way up to the highest level integrators out there who are doing, 6 and 7 figure installations, everybody across the board, in my opinion, is looking at, service, the smart home as a service. Julie Jacobson over at CE Pro kind of coined that term, and I think it's a great one. And so to me, that's the biggest story. I think if you look at it specifically from the home technology professional, from the CEDIA angle, clearly the story is about the increasing competition and downward price pressure that we're seeing in the smart home on what have in the past been really specialized and high ticket products are becoming a little bit more commoditized, and we're not there yet to where home, the CEDIA channel is in danger. I'm not in that camp. I'm an optimist. I think that home technology professionals have a bright future, but I do think part of that future, a significant part, is cracking that RMR code. And part of that is remote systems management. Again, figuring out how we can minimize our warranty support costs, provide a really high level of uptime and great customer experience for our clients. So to me, without question, biggest story of the year was that smart home as a service.
Yeah, I think that's the big, even in the DIY space, that's the big focus. How do you move beyond just a one-time hardware sale? And this is veering a little bit into, I think, the third tier of managed, or the third tier of smart home we don't talk a lot about, but the managed smart home from the big cable guys and some of the security guys, that actually is maybe one of the most successful segments of the market. And I actually think the one company we never talk about that is probably the most successful smart home company is Vivint. I mean, Vivint is just killing it, and they don't even call themselves a security company. They call themselves a smart home company. So I think that managed smart home, people will pay for that.
I'm still amazed by that because I just don't want to have to pay for that as a consumer. I don't even want to have to pay a security company. So to pay for someone to manage, and particularly maybe Vivint is a different story, but like if it were my AT&T or my Verizon or whatever, I don't want to pay them extra money to manage my home, probably because I'm more of a DIY guy. But
yeah, Richard, I was going to say there's a lot of things we could say about you, and one of them for sure is that you are not the average consumer.
No, that's a really good point. But don't you also feel like companies are trying to potentially extract additional money from customers, particularly when they're telecom providers and they're trying to get smart home services, and that consumers have a mistrust of that?
Yeah, I think that could be a fair assessment. I think there's got to be a value add for these companies, and I think that's the big question. But I don't know that I see it as them. I think extracting money has negative connotations. I think they're trying to figure out how they can come at the smart home, provide some value, and get a recurring monthly fee out of that. Now that's going to range from company to company and how they approach that and what sort of level of value are they really delivering. Of course, we could debate that. We could easily spend a whole episode talking about that. But I think that it runs the gamut. And again, I think for the average consumer who just wants a turnkey solution and maybe $30, $40 a month isn't a huge deal to them budgetarily. I think that's something they won't even bat an eye at.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny because I feel like there's that low end consumer where they just give me a solution, give me something that I can pay for. And then there's people in the middle who are more technical and they may want to do it themselves, like me. And then there are your customers who are more likely to probably spend on services like this. It's interesting how that market is segmented.
Yeah. And there's some interesting things this year that have happened. I mean, EchoStar was one of these companies that was getting into this, and they completely dropped their home security, home automation line off.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. So I mean, I know everybody is, and I think, what was it? Verizon was the one that kind of moved theirs around a little bit. It's still out there, but Sage was just completely shut down and discontinued. That was a very strange one to me. And I'm kind of falling on the side with Richard here, where the EchoStar customer, the Dish Network customer, is somebody looking probably to save a couple bucks on a cable bill, and for them to offer a premium service on top of it. Really, I don't know if it just hit the mark of their customer or not. I mean, even if they did have the extra couple of dollars, these people were moving to save more than they could even save by moving to Dish Network. So I would wonder if these are. I mean, they're out there. The managed home market is there, but I wonder how well that's going to be done moving forward. I like what Vivint's done. I like that they're a third party and they're not offering the home services and everything. I think they're doing a bang up job. But this is a strange one to me. It kind of will continue to be a strange one to me. Like I said, I'm falling along the line of they're extracting money from you rather than giving you anything good.
No one loves the cable company. Sorry, right. Comcast.
And that's the problem, right?
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting is that middle ground player, like the SimpliSafes of the world, that I think are kind of bringing you the best of both worlds. They got your self-install for you, Richard. They allow you to move. And that's what ADT was trying to do with their Canopy service, which they basically said, hey, here's our security service. If you're a DIY home security company, you can now integrate with the professional monitoring and security service, and you can offer your product. They'll pay us a little bit of money. So I do think there's some innovation happening in that space, and maybe some ways in which you can fit the needs of people who don't want to pay and get a 2-year contract. So I still think that area is going to be interesting to watch.
For sure.
Let's move on to what I think was the story of the year. I think without a doubt, Amazon and the Echo and Alexa was the story of the year for smart home. And I'm gonna one up all you guys. I've actually been doing a survey on this. I'm gonna world debut my survey results to a certain degree. When I did a survey of smart home insiders through my newsletter and through social media, this by far was the runaway story. 2/3 of the people who responded said this was the biggest story of the year. I think we all kind of saw it last year. We saw, hey, Amazon with Echo and Alexa. Wow, this is a surprise. But I didn't think it would, I don't know if we knew what kind of magnitude of success they would have this year. And I think just strategically, I talked a little bit about this before, maybe, I think last year, Amazon just is outmaneuvering to a certain degree. They're playing, this is an old saying, but they're playing chess or everyone's playing checkers. They kind of did this thing that no one really expected. And now everyone's trying to kind of copy them.
Right.
Google's trying to do the same thing. So, kudos to them.
Speaking of outmaneuvering, Mike, how could you come to the table with this big survey result? Heads up on that. Hey, hats off to you.
I'm world debuting it on our podcast, guys.
I'm flattered. No, I think it is. Clearly, we've said a lot about AI and voice control, so I won't rehash it. I agree. It's huge story in the smart home.
Big enough that it was my pick too. I honestly think that the digital home assistant at large is the big story of this past year. I was a naysayer. I was the person talking with you, Jason, on previous episodes about how I still don't believe in voice. And largely, it was because Siri was so bad. And I think that what Amazon proved is that you can do it right. You can provide developers with the right tool set. You can iterate and you can gradually provide additional capabilities in an agile way. And if you don't know that term, don't worry about it. But the point is that they have incrementally improved this product since it landed in my home. I got one of these not because I bought one, but because I received it as a gift. And I can't imagine my household without it right now.
Very cool.
And they're continuing, right? I mean, they released the Dot. They released
bought some of them.
Oh, you bought a Dot. So now you're such a convert. You went out and bought it. I think maybe if we, in a couple of years, Richard's doubting of voice control will be like the people who said the internet was a fad. So we're gonna have to surface that like 3 years from now. We're gonna surface that and play it for you, Richard.
It's like when the people at Apple get on stage and say, "We're never going to do this." You should pay attention to that.
Right. I got to admit, I was a late convert to the voice control game as well. And a lot of it had to do with just how bad they were, like you alluded to, Richard. But also, I think in hindsight, to me, it was a form factor thing. And when voice control was still tied to pulling a phone out of your pocket and pushing a button and waiting for a second to then issue a command, to me, it just that was just too much friction, I think.
Right.
And so having that always on form factor to me was the big kind of turning point when we talk about AI and smart assistants in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always had a hard time imagining, how do you get mics all over the house? I mean, seriously, how do you do that? I never would have come up with the concept that Amazon did. Never.
You know, there was and I'm going back to the Amazon Go thing that really surprised me about that video. The one thing no one really talked about at the beginning of the video, and I think this plays out to all their things they're doing. They said 4 years ago, we started to think about how to reinvent the grocery store. And I'm thinking, you've been working on this for 4 years. So it makes you wonder, what else are they working on? What other crazy things is Amazon working on?
Come on, let's be serious. All they did was they bought the mini bar company.
All right, guys. So Seth, do you have a sound effect for like looking in the crystal ball?
Oh yeah, I'll edit it in right now.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll put that in post. So now is the part of the podcast where we look into our crystal balls. We look into these binoculars and see what's coming in the next year. Richard, we're going to put you on the hot seat and ask you what your big predictions are for 2017 in the smart home.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is happening is that people are getting sick of all the apps. And I have to say that I have anticipated this for years. I think the idea that every product has to have its own app is a terrible idea. And frankly, that's one of the appeals that hubs, that was for the bell, have offered over the years. So I think that we're going to see additional consolidation through products like the Echo, like HomeKit, like Google Home, perhaps like Cortana. I think we're going to see that there are companies recognizing that they can fill a gap where people don't want to have 27 apps on their phone, but instead some centralized means of controlling the things in their life. And I think that's going to be a big thing.
Definitely. And that is something that obviously as home technology professionals, we've been providing that value add for a long time in terms of consolidating different control devices. But it's a whole different game when you start talking about, these DIY products and how does that eventually consolidate and shake out for potentially an average a consumer. And so I think you're right. It goes back to app fatigue. Everybody's getting tired of fumbling through different apps and stuff. And so where do we go from here?
Seth, what is your big prediction for the year?
Well, I think it kind of falls in line with Richard here, and in a couple. I'm looking at the notes, a couple of other predictions here, but I'm going to say Siri in the can is real this year.
Oh boy!
So, I'm sitting here listening to the conversation on the Echo that we just had, and I'm thinking, am I the only one that's feeling pessimistic about this? Amazon has created a good product, but where does this thing go? It doesn't look like Amazon has a clear vision for Echo. Yes, they've
You don't think so?
I don't. I mean, they've iterated. They've put out these little building blocks that you, as an enthusiast, can build and put something together. But they haven't. I don't really think they've made it come full circle to be part of a compelling story.
I have a feeling we're in for another Seth and Richard throwdown.
No, we don't have time for that.
Cage match.
We don't have time for that. But I guess, I would just say that I would disagree with that. I believe that they have a program level backlog for what to do with this product. And they are just slowly working their way through that with the capabilities that they're adding over time. And it's really just a matter of time and resources to be able to get it out there.
Yeah, time's a good thing. I think they're going to run up on it too when other products come out and start competing and beating them. I'm looking at Google Home this month. Just now came up with their API. I don't know where that's going to go, but just today there's already posts on the Control 4 forums about some dealer who's written a Control 4 driver for it. So that took something that took Amazon Echo. I probably had mine over a year and a half before we saw Control 4 integration. Took Google a couple of months. The Amazon is not as big as Google or Apple in this respect. So I'm just wondering how much further they're going to get down the road with this before you are saying, oh, it's a great little device that I have, but I do everything this way. I don't know. But I think that Siri and Google are going to be some pretty formidable opponents that Amazon is looking up a bigger hill, I think, than anybody realizes at this point. Because to me, the Echo is still very, very basic in what it can do, and very, I hate to say it, nerdy. Like it's something fun that you can ask, tell me a dumb joke, and it'll tell you a dumb joke, but to do any of the integrations with it still takes, a bit of a bit of a turn. Like it's not something that I'm going to hand off to my parents and say, hey, do this and hook them up to your Philips Hue lights and see what you can do with this, if this and that. That's not going to happen. But I guarantee you, when Apple comes to the table with whatever the Siri they can is, it's going to have a more elegant interface to getting onboarded.
So I have a wild ass prediction on what that is.
Okay.
I think Siri in a can isn't going to be Siri in a can. And I think that's a good thing, because I don't want Apple to come out with an appliance, because I think that would be a Me Too solution. And that is not what Apple does. Apple refines concepts until they figure out how to deliver it properly. My wild ass prediction, I hope that doesn't require an explicit tag, is that we're not going to see Siri in a can, but we're going to see Siri in Sonos.
Whoa.
Interesting.
You heard it here first.
Woo! Well, yeah, it kind of makes sense for them to supply the AI to other products. I mean, that would make sense. So yeah.
Is my like cry appeal to Apple to buy Sonos? Is this what you see happening? I've been writing about this for years.
Well,
please buy
it's
Sonos.
Funny.
Are they going to do it?
You have been writing about that for years, and now we see a tighter partnership between Sonos and Apple than we ever have. Enough so that I'm also willing to make another prediction that I don't even have in my notes here, that, Seth, we're going to see AirPlay.
Oh my gosh. That's going to be great. I get my first child and AirPlay on Sonos.
All in 1 year. Yeah. Well, when you see AirPlay, that's when you know the Siri in a Sonos can is getting close.
There you go.
That would be those two predictions would be very cool. And I think, well, we'll see what they can pull off.
Siri in a Sonos is what we can call it.
Yep. That would be cool.
Okay, Jason, what's your big prediction for the year?
Yeah, we can move through mine quick because we have talked about it a lot, and that is AI. Bigger than voice control. A lot of people have been talking about AI as if it's a voice control solution, and I think in the home technology space in particular, I've heard that conversation quite a bit. And we have to remember, AI is much bigger than voice control. This is about actual intelligence, actual, Seth talked about it earlier, building that intelligence into the home where the home is thinking for us and making suggestions and acting proactively. I think continued innovation there in AI is huge. And then next generation interfaces in general, like we talked about, and that's where you get into voice control and really anything other than an app, right? Let's look at physical control and voice and see where else some of that stuff can go. And so I think, to me, those look like probably the biggest stories ahead in 2017.
I love that.
I do too. I'm going to go with mine. I'll start with my wild ass prediction. Robots. That's it. I'm moving on.
Mic dropped.
Enough said.
Are these like the Boston Mechanics style robots that you're afraid of, or?
I just think robotics is going to become a bigger and bigger story over time, and I think there's just a natural integration at some point with robotics at some level with the smart home, and whether that's like Roomba based understanding. I just recorded a podcast. I haven't published it yet, but the guy, one of the chief innovation guys for iControl or iRobot, not iControl. One of the things that he said is they have a unique view with their Roombas in that they can actually do a 2D map of the home, unlike anyone else, and they can also start to use this robot to maybe, I threw this out there. What else can you do? Can you use it to respond to security calls, or if there's motion in another room? He goes, sure, we can do that. So I just think using robotics in the home is going to be a natural kind of peanut butter and jelly integration with the smart home. I don't know if it's next year, but I think we're going to see some companies coming out with some interesting things there.
So I'm picturing a Roomba with a taser attached to it.
Which would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I still think about that Wink commercial. The creepy robot that's watching.
That was so creepy. Oh wow!
Watching the mom and workout.
yeah.
Oh, I have maybe this is going to go in the smart home museum at some point, but I have my Wink robot T-shirt. Do you guys, any of you guys have one of those?
No.
Yeah.
No, can't say I do.
My other predictions, I think this kind of ties into what some of you guys said, but I think smart home is going to go increasingly into the fabric of the home. I think, Richard, you've talked a little bit in the past about how IKEA is doing interesting stuff, or they could be maybe one of the interesting companies in smart home. Right. I just think building intelligence into the fabric of the home, whether that's furniture, new home builds, I just think that becomes more and more of an important thing over time. So I think we'll see a little bit of that next year.
I love that. And certainly HomeKit is one of the possibilities there, right? I mean, Apple was making a big move trying to partner with home builders to enable homes that are available to new home buyers with HomeKit compatible devices already a part of the home. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, I have a smart thermostat and a light switch that can work together. I mean, it potentially could mean all your lighting, all your HVAC, including the HVAC devices themselves, your appliances. I mean, the breadth of this is pretty significant. I think there's a lot of possibility here.
There's a company that I'm actually, I have to do a disclosure, I'm consulting with a little bit, Asterix, called Neurotechnologies, but they actually are doing light switches that have contextual understanding of the home. So they want to basically build some of the smart home intelligence into a light switch. So, and they don't even have a camera, but they can know whether or not it's you or a dog or whatever, just based on motion sensing and not even using a camera. So that type of stuff I think will be interesting. Go ahead. Sorry, Richard.
I want to teach my dog how to use a light switch. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I think Apple and any company that can get into being just a line item on a home being built is such a smart move at this point, because Jason works with these builders. I've worked with the builders in the past. I mean, they're looking to move people into the homes, and if they can have a company kind of like Apple or even maybe Samsung behind them, and say, hey, this is a smart home. It's made and kind of approved by Apple. I mean, that's huge for them. And it's just a smart move all the way around. Apple gets their product or their infrastructure into the home, even third-party devices, like Ecobee thermostats could get into the home, and they would hardware would get put in. And then for the integrators or installers like Jason, myself, we get to sell and install upgraded hardware into home. And at the end of the day, this is all stuff that people want. They want to have this stuff in their homes, and they want to be to be in a house that has smarter devices, so they can sit back and control it. So I'm excited about that, Mike. That's a pretty good pick. I really didn't think about that, but that's a really good pick for this year. I'm hoping to see that come true.
And I'll do my one last point, and I think it's related. I think we're going to increasingly see smart home just built into things, and that could be appliances. So I think we're going to see. I think we're seeing success with the standalone discrete products like doorbells, but I think over time you'll see things like Whirlpool and these large appliance makers, whether it's Samsung with smart things, build in smart home. And I think what that opens the door for is innovative business models. I was at a conference about a month or two ago, and there's this guy talking about this concept of appliance as a service. And so there's this idea, appliance as a service is something where you don't buy your white good, you don't buy your refrigerator, you don't buy your washing machine. You basically are just buying it as a service. It's a monthly fee. And if 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you want to trade it in for the newest model, Samsung brings that out, you have the newest model. So, and this doesn't have to be just this model. I think overall we're going to see, once you get a bunch of connected appliances out there, you can see more innovative business models. One idea I wrote about was kitchen as a service, right? Because I read a lot about the smart kitchen. But what if you're Whirlpool and you just want to install a managed kitchen into someone's home, and you have the Whirlpool refrigerator, Whirlpool oven, Whirlpool this product, and you just pay a monthly fee. I don't have to spend $10,000 for the Gen Air kitchen. I just pay $500 a month for the Gen Air kitchen. I have all the cutting edge appliances. So that may be like a crazy idea, may never come to fruition, but I think we're going to see more people experimenting with business models.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities there. Seth and I had a gentleman named Daniel Obadovsky on our show a while back. He wrote a book called The Silent Intelligence, and pretty broad book. I'd recommend it for anybody who's interested in the Internet of Things and what we're talking about right here specifically with this conversation. A pretty fascinating take. And he talked about some of the opportunities that could present themselves when that sort of intelligence is built into things like water heaters or furnaces or refrigerators, in terms of you talk about the product integrating with services, right? That's a conversation we've been having, and how local service companies, home technology guys like me, for example, could potentially be tied into a central, I don't know what the proper term for it is, a database or something that these are all reporting back to, and helping homeowners connect those dots and get proactive service from qualified professionals before a small problem becomes a big one. And so that's a broad reaching, I'm painting with broad strokes there, but interesting. I think as you see intelligence getting built in to products themselves and what the possibilities are there, not just for the manufacturers, but also for tying into even potentially local service providers.
Well, guys, we're at the part of the show we're going to start wrapping it up. We're going to start like the fire's dying down. My glass is empty. I need some more eggnog.
Time for a refill.
I need more beer.
I need more beer.
But before we wrap this thing up, this supersized second annual Christmas special or holiday special, Festivus special, we're going to do a little pimping of our shows. So I'll start. I do a show called The Smart Home Show, which we were all making fun of because I put it out at a very chunky, irregular basis. You guys are like clockwork. Richard, I think, publishes his at the same time every time. At least if he wasn't so busy, he would. And you guys do too. But my show is The Smart Home Show. Listen to it. You can find it on Technology.fm, or you just look it in your favorite podcast app. And Richard, what show do you do?
Well, I host Home On, and that's a show that is really focused on DIY or over-the-counter product. People who are interested in just doing this stuff themselves. We focus on
You don't need a prescription.
Technology.
You don't need a prescription for your products. You can just buy the products you talk about.
And the product, exactly. You can just get them, buy them. You don't need a doctor's approval or anything. It's awesome. So if that's of interest to you, check us out at the Digital Media Zone at thedigitalmediazone.com.
And lastly, Seth and Jason, what do you got? What do you guys do? And I think you should pimp also not only your podcast, but your new business effort.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So we do the Home Tech podcast, which you can find on our website at HomeTech.fm, or of course in all the iTunes and podcast directories that you would expect. Seth and I, as we've talked about here, come at it from the home technology professional side. That's what we both do. That's what we've been doing for a very long time. But we also talk about DIY products, and I know we've got a lot of listeners to our show who come from that angle as well. And we really see one of the big things happening is a DIY, a convergence in the smart home, and we see those lines as blurring. And so that's something that we talk about quite a bit. But yeah, we do come at it from the CEDIA angle. We put out a show every Friday, and we really enjoy doing it. We get guests on, have interviews, and sometimes Seth and I just catch up and talk about news. So yeah, if there's anybody listening who hasn't checked out our show, we'd love to have you come on over. HomeTech.fm is where you can find that. And then, Mike, thanks again for a couple of plugs there. We recently launched HomeTech.academy, which is an online learning site, and that one is targeted right now, at least, at home technology professionals, and we may change that or broaden that out to do some DIY stuff. But it's really an online learning platform to help home technology professionals understand the different software tools and products that are out there on the market. So we'd encourage people to go check that out as well. Once again, HomeTech.academy. So thanks again, Mike. We appreciate it.
All great podcasts, guys. You can find all of them at technology.fm. But this has been a lot of fun. I think we need to keep doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. 3rd annual. This one crept up. I could hardly believe it had been a year, and I'm really excited that we were able to find a time that worked for everybody and get back together. And Seth, hopefully we didn't interrupt any baby deliveries.
Not yet. It's soon, though. We're
Well, congrats on that, by the way. I know I've said it on our show, but I'll take this opportunity to say it again. Congrats and welcome to fatherhood.
And I have one piece of advice for you. Do not name your child Alexa, Siri, or Cortana. That's the only advice I'm going to give you.
That's good advice.
done.
And we just set off devices across the entire world.
Oh, man.
All right, guys. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
All right. Happy holidays. Take care.
See y'all.